Hello and welcome to another episode of the Phoenix Wisdom Podcast. I am your host, Janet Sandberg. I am a divine channel, Reiki master teacher, intuitive life coach, helping you figure out who you are, why you're here, what's getting in your way, and how to move forward with clarity, confidence, grace, and ease. And I am also a mental health advocate and host of this podcast for the last 2.5 years. And today we are talking to Jennifer Ragazzo. I didn't ask her how to say her name before we started this.
You did a great
I hope
job.
I said it correctly. Jen, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Janet, for having me. This is an honor to be able to come on this podcast that gives people space to have such vulnerable, open, and honest conversations and really important conversations. So I really appreciate the invitation.
Of course, of course. Let's start by just learning a little bit more about you.
Absolutely. So professionally, I'm a soul aligned wellness coach. And that title in and of itself is something that I have stepped into over the past 15 years of coaching and helping people on their own health and wellness journey. So I started off as a straight up health coach 15 years ago and continued to dig deeper and deeper and educated myself in naturopathy and integrative nutrition and functional medicine. And then I got really deep into even just quantum healing and energetic healing and understanding our human existence and how interconnected it is, mind, body, and spirit. And the more that I helped other people, which was very motivated by my own journey,
Yes.
and my own journey into the more that I really did understand that we can't leave any one part out. So the way that I help people today is very much led by their soul, and their soul is speaking, their soul is calling to them. And that might be through symptoms that are showing up for them, whether those symptoms are mental health symptoms like anxiety and depression or suicidal ideation, whether those symptoms are chronic migraines or pain in their body or insomnia. Those are whispers, and they're beautiful divine invitations from our from our inner true essence of self saying, hey, we want a little bit more of something or less of something. So I am a very critical thinker. I'm someone who always asks why. I've been doing that since I was a very little girl. Why, wanting to understand and get to the root cause of dis-ease. And I believe today that the biggest root cause of disease is being out of alignment with our divine self. And how do we then find alignment with our divine design? Well, we find alignment with our divine design when we really understand who we are, and we understand the divine, and we understand that we've been created on purpose for a purpose. And we take a look at all the what I call gunk and junk that's getting in the way, that thickens the veil between the divine mind of God that is inside of us. And that sounds a little wild and crazy, because I will have, again, people come to me saying, I've got these autoimmune conditions. I can't get rid of them. I feel like crap. I'm not sleeping. I'm anxious all the time. Help. And I meet them where they are, and we start peeling back those layers, and we take a look at what is it that your soul is really calling you to. And sometimes we need to clean up the diet, and we need to reduce our toxins, and really connect deeper with creation, with nature, with the things that are provided for our sustenance. So I do it in a really unique way. And I have many different tools in my toolbox, as it sounds like you do too.
Mhm.
So alongside of that, I'm also a mother of 3 young adult children, 18, 20, and 22. I've been married to my best friend for 27 years. Yes, that's a little bit about me.
Amazing. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. And, as always, when we're starting these conversations, everything sounds wonderful and life
Yeah.
is great. And, we found ourselves
Mhm.
but it wasn't always this light and bright.
No,
No.
no, no, it wasn't. It wasn't. For me, I would say, as I said, I've always been someone who's questioned, who wants to understand why. I'm the oldest of 4 in my family, to give a little bit of context, because we all come into this life and we're being conditioned from the time that we enter into our mother's womb. And, we come in for many different reasons, and we come in and our souls choose our parents. And there's this divine connection. And I have had to really learn a lot of that along my way, but you don't know this when you're a little child. And so I was born the oldest to four children. My dad was a Vietnam veteran. My parents got married shortly after my dad got out of Vietnam, and I was their firstborn. And so, being a highly sensitive, very highly sensitive person, highly sensitive child, I observed a lot and I felt a lot in my home. And I started taking on this belief that it was my job to make my parents happy and to monitor their moods and to morph into what I perceived they wanted me to be. And I became the fixer of the family. I was a chronic people pleaser. That aside, those are more revelations that I came to in my adulthood as I've dug deeper into understanding myself. But as a child, I was sick a lot. I was sick a lot. And today, again, I understand the metaphysical and I can look back and see how my little body was messaging me, but I didn't know how to read those
Sure.
messages, and neither did my parents. So I was put on a lot of different medications. I had chronic ear infections. We had ear tubes and take out the tonsils and all of those things. So teenage years, just more dis-ease, chronic issues with my period, diagnoses of endometriosis, multiple surgeries all through my 20s. And I mean, stacking medication after medication after medication. And I got really lost in the allopathic medical world. And throughout all of that, anxiety and depression were very prevalent for me, very prevalent. And I even remember being a very young child. I might have been 8 or 9 years old. I can picture being in my childhood bedroom and feeling just so hopeless and lost and wanting to put my hand through the window. It was like a memory as I was reflecting on what am I going to even share on this podcast, because these are not things that I've shared with anybody outside of one person, and I'll share that in a little bit. Um, but I remember wanting to put my hand through the window, and it really was more of like a pain that would escape me from the pain that I was feeling, like the confusion and not understanding why I wanted to escape the chaos. There was a lot of chaos in my home. My parents are very loving people. They did the best that they could with the resources and self awareness that they had. Again, there were four of us. There was just a lot. It was just a
Yeah.
lot of chaos. So over time, that became a habit of mine to fantasize about escaping. And it was in college that I started to even play around with. I remember overdosing on over the counter medications, and I had been put on Paxil at the time, which didn't, I see now, didn't help me. It made things worse. It made a lot of these feelings and thoughts worse. But I even overdosed on the SSRI, and then very quickly came and got help and said, I actually don't want to die. I just wanted to keep escaping the heaviness that I was feeling. It was just like a deep, deep heaviness that was weighing in on me. So I then, throughout my 20s, a way of control, a form of control for me was I developed an eating disorder and body dysmorphia. So that was another way that I learned how to control what felt so very chaotic in my life. And I became absolutely fastidious with my diet and my exercise. Everything around me seemed to be out of control, and my health felt very out of control.
Hmm.
So I did what I knew how to do. And I was in therapy in my 20s, which was helpful. It was definitely helpful to me, but I just didn't understand where the roots of all of these things were coming from. So there was a lot of running, there was a lot of trialing. But the one thing that I can say as I look back that I'm very, very happy for and I'm very proud of myself for is my persistence in seeking answers and trialing things and experimenting things. God gave me this no quit drive. So I had gone through in my late 20s, I got married at 23. I had gone through, because of my endometriosis, I ended up, we ended up struggling to get pregnant. And so I had gone through a few IVF cycles to get pregnant.
Huh?
And by the way, all of these different medications that I'm talking about, all of them also have side effects that
Of course.
impact mood, right? There's a strong gut brain connection, like all of the things. But I knew none of this at this stage of my life. So when I was trying to get pregnant with who is now my oldest child, my first in vitro cycle failed, and we went to a different reproductive endocrinologist. And that I was assigned a nurse who sat down with me and had some conversations with me that were really quite simple, but they were simple conversations about my diet and the things that I was consuming. And because they were trying to really create a very controlled setting hormonally, she asked that I not eat foods that would alter my hormones. She mentioned organic, and 24 years ago, we're talking like, she's like, make sure you have organic dairy and organic meats. And I'm like, organic? What is even, I don't even know what that is. That's a thing.
Where do you get that
Where
stuff?
do I get it? Exactly. And the nearest Whole Foods to where I was living was like 45 minutes away because stores like that were not in the high demand that they are today. So, being someone who also loved to control, I was like, ooh, something else to rabbit hole. And perhaps this is going to fix me and I can control this. So I began radically altering my diet and learning everything that I could. But the real gift in what that nurse talked to me about was she talked to me about the connection between what I was putting in my body and how I was feeling. So whether it was hormones or even mood, I was like, whoa, mind blowing. And at the same time, I was in therapy. And we were working a lot on my codependence tendencies. We were working on a lot of my control. One of the things that the reproductive endocrinologist had said to me when I went to him to inquire about IVF was, you've got to bring your body weight up. I will not do an in vitro fertilization cycle on someone with such low body weight. So I had to do some deeper work
Yeah.
to allow myself to gain weight. That was very hard for me. So here I've got some mental emotional support. And then I've got someone who's helping me make connections between what I put in and on my body and how my body is physically functioning. And then I started seeing an acupuncturist. And the acupuncturist picked up right away through his own modality of and lens of looking at the body that I had a belief. I had a belief stuck in me that I was infertile. And some of that did come from being 19 years old. And I had a surgery, a laparotomy, where they opened me up and they saw endometriosis all over. They labeled it stage 4 endometriosis. And the doctor had given me a picture and said, this is the worst case of endometriosis I've ever seen. So, yes, at 19, I took on that label. I made an assumption I was infertile. So, I looked at that and I started to live into it. So I was living into the belief that I was infertile. I didn't expect myself to get pregnant. So of course my body wasn't going to follow what my mind was
Right.
limiting. So this acupuncturist said, we're going to do some work around that too. He would put different acupuncture needles in certain points. He would have me hold a little vial. I can't even tell you exactly what he did today. I just went with it and I trusted it. And I would go home and I would do these affirmations. My therapist introduced me to Louise Hay in my 20s, which was amazing.
Beautiful.
So I very first dip in the pool of the metaphysical world. And then I've got this support where he has me doing certain visualizations and affirmations that is speaking truth into my body and trying to shift away from that limiting mindset. So I give you that context because there was just a lot, but those were the really through a lot of the pain and the suffering that I was going through, that also became the doorway for me to continue to seek healing for myself outside of the one way that I knew, which early on was allopathic. So all of that said, my anxiety and depression still ebbed and flowed. I did get pregnant. I got pregnant. The second cycle was beautiful and it was polar opposite the first. So that was awesome because that gave me the experience of being able to shift my physical experience with my mind and along with other things like my diet and my lifestyle. So, jump forward, I suffered from postpartum depression with my first child. So, I was put on an antidepressant again. I had stopped it in my 20s, went back on an antidepressant, and I didn't know how to get off of it. I had no idea how to get off of it, and I stayed on it because there was another limiting belief that I bought into, and I'd always watched my mom struggle with depression,
Mm.
and I'd watched my grandmother struggle with depression.
Wow.
Yes, they both struggled with depression, and they didn't talk about it. They didn't go to therapy.
Well, no.
Wasn't
Not
talked
back then,
about.
you didn't talk about those things.
No, no. I watched my grandmother pray. Like, my grandmother would just pray, but she had so much anxiety. Like I could feel it off of her, and you can feel people's energy, and she just had so much anxiety. And I watched her cling to the only thing that she knew, and that would be prayer. And that was beautiful to see, but that also created in me like confusion in you're praying so much and why isn't God helping you? And then my mom, when she really started to struggle, she struggled hard around the time that I got married. So she was probably about the age that I am now, like 50s, early 50s. She was put on antidepressant. She did start going to therapy at that stage in her own journey and in her life. And my mom really started also struggling with suicidal thoughts. And a few times she had attempted suicide, more through overdosing and trying to escape her pain through the overdose, not the intentional, I'm going to kill myself, but I just want to escape this. And being the oldest and the fixer and the people pleaser, my dad didn't know how to handle that, and so he would tell me, "Go handle that." So I'm giving you that context here, Janet, in this conversation. That was part of why I hid my own suffering, my own
Yeah.
struggle with it was because I had to be strong. I had the persona of being strong. I was this overcomer. My dad was a Marine. I very much modeled myself after my father, and I made my father very proud by being very strong and resilient. And I couldn't admit that I was struggling with the things that my mother struggled with. But I also took on the belief that it was genetic. So I I have differing opinions about that today, but
Mhm.
I think a lot of it is learned, so much of it's just learned.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's learned. Trying to summarize my whole journey with this to get to the point of where I shifted it. But so in having babies, so having a baby every other year, my second was a frozen embryo from my first cycle. And then my third was a surprise. And stayed on the antidepressants because I didn't know how to get off of them. And it was after I had my third baby, I had become healthier in a lot of ways. I was living more holistic in a lot of ways, not completely by any means, but I was doing what I knew how to do and I was changing things. And it got me thinking. It really got me thinking, do I have to be on this? I don't actually want to be on this. I don't want to depend on this. And I don't even know if it makes me feel better. So I myself, through my own research, disclaimer, don't do what I'm saying here, but I weaned myself off because I had nobody in my life that could help me wean myself off. But I did my own research and I weaned myself off of the antidepressant slowly. And that was really empowering for me. And I didn't really actually feel different. So again, behind the scenes, I would struggle with anxiety and depression and not tell anybody, nobody, maybe my husband a little bit. Very hard to escape from your partner that
Yes.
lives with you.
Yes.
I still didn't know what to do. So I did all the other things that I knew how to do. I was a runner. I would run, 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 run. I mean, I had the t-shirt that said, I run to burn off the crazy. And I really truly believed it. Like running was very therapeutic for me, but it also was a way for me to literally escape. It was a way for me to just feel like I was doing something. And yes, it did help my mental health a lot. But over time, it started to not work and it started to catabolically break down my body. Throughout this time, too, Janet, so 15 years ago, so about mid 30s, I stepped into health coaching. And I was a teacher prior and then stepped away and was home with my kids. And I had learned so much about health and wellness. And I had seen firsthand so many shifts in myself and in people around me that I wanted to bring that to people. I wanted to help other people with that. I wanted to share this hope that I had found in being able to heal, not completely, but in many different ways. And so I started coaching, and coaching was like an amazing forum for my own growth because
Mhm.
not only am I learning through my own lived experience. I'm learning through every single client that sits before me. It's like huge. And I start to see like different patternings in people. And I start to, as you know, I said at the beginning of this call, like start to really see how we can't leave out one part of ourselves, how interconnected everything is, and how our mental health impacts our gut health, and how our gut health is so connected to our mental health. And so again, I'm experiencing this professionally. I'm continuing to educate myself. I was obsessive for a long period of time in educating um, myself and learning the human body. I was feeling okay, but what I did start to recognize, and this is part of my own breakdown and my dark night of the soul, I kept myself so busy and so on, whether I was literally running down a trail and doing half marathons, or I was working and working and working. You know, I'm momming and I'm super mom and I'm going to be the best mom in the whole world. I'm going to do all the things with the kids. And then I'm going to run a business, and then I'm going to have a side business. And then I'm going to work for, one of the schools that I went to all at the exact same time, so that I was on all the time. And if I was on all the time, then I didn't have to face myself. I didn't have to sit in the silence. I didn't have to listen to the thoughts that were in my head still, that would still, the self deprecating thoughts, the limiting beliefs, the things that really were driving anxiety and depression. I was controlling it. I could control it. But if I ever did get still, or I did get silenced, or I did something, I'm using air quotes here, wrong, I would beat the crap out of myself. I mean, really behind the scenes, beat the crap out of myself. And one of the things that happened with me throughout my lifetime was, as I mentioned earlier, I became a chronic people pleaser. And in being a chronic people pleaser, I was so fearful of ever being wrong, because I inherently didn't believe I was actually right. And that in order to be right or valued or worthy, I had to morph into what other people wanted me to be. Anybody who's listening who has ever struggled with people pleasing, you know that that's incredibly toxic. You lose yourself. We're not here to please other people. That's actually impossible. We're not here to fix anybody else, right?
Mhm.
So that was a huge driver of the breakdown of my own body.
Mm.
About 5.5 years ago, I had my darkest night of the soul. On the outside, everyone who knew me thought I had it all together. I have a very successful coaching practice. Again, I'm multiple businesses. I'm almost used like I went to the School of Applied Functional Medicine, which is an online program, and I was on staff there, and I was looked up to like Jen. She's very knowledgeable. She's got a successful practice. Like, her. And even though that was part of how I ran away from myself, it also was eating at me because I felt such guilt. I felt such shame. And I was in a small group at the time at SAFM, the School of Applied Functional Medicine. So I'm in a small group there with other practitioners, and it's like a mastermind. And we would learn together, and we did some functional tests, like all at the same time. Let's do a couple functional tests. I threw a couple extras in there because, I'm always trying to fix myself. And I got all these test results back, and I was my sickest client. I'd never seen someone so on fire, in just absolute inflammatory catabolic breakdown. I'm like, how? I'm doing so much. Like, I threw the kitchen sink at myself. Like, you name it, I did it. And on top of all the other, like the stuff I would consume and do, always to keep my head above water, I would go for acupuncture, Reiki, cranial sacral. I mean, and I would do it all in the same week. I was like always doing so much. I would never ever coach my clients the way I coached myself.
Right.
It wasn't less is more approach. It was more is more for me, because again, I was avoiding sitting in the silence.
Mhm.
And so early 2020, ironically, the world goes into this crazy space. I was starting to break down, and it was my dark night of the soul moment for myself. Oh my gosh, the depression just got so heavy and so dark that I felt like I was drowning in it, and I wanted it to end. I wanted it all to end. And I would play with the suicidal ideation that I'd been playing with here and there when I wanted to escape from the time that I was a child. I would play with it, and I would just go back and forth and back and forth. And it was in 2017 that my mom almost really did end her life. That was really an interesting time for me because I remember standing over her when she was in the ICU and saying to her, not literally, but in my head, saying to her, "Mom, I release you," because I tried to fix her for so long. And I said, "It's your choice and I love you, but I can't save you." Uh, Thankfully, my mom was able to find help that really did help her save herself. But it was this, I gotta let my mom go. So for me, I'm in my own dark place and I'm realizing, oh, wait a second. I released my mom to help herself. I've got to help myself. But where do I start? I don't know. I did not know where to start. Again, I would lay and fantasize about like, do I end it? I want to end it. And then I would think, but what am I ending it? Like, what am I, what is the end? Like, what is the end? Then I go, where? I had some misconceptions, I think, when I look back to what I believe today about heaven. And then I'd have some guilt, like, well, is suicide a sin? And does that mean I go to hell? Like all of those religious constructs. And so I would just play with it and play with it and play with it. And it didn't get me anywhere. So I cried out one night specifically. I very much remember crying out in my dark night of the soul and saying, God, help me. I don't feel you. I still believe you are there, but I don't feel you. And that scared me more than anything else is that I did not feel a divine connection. I couldn't feel it, but I knew to cry out. And I said, I need help. I don't know what kind of help, but I need help. I need help with my physical self. I can't do this anymore. I'm way too close. It's like you also are a coach and a practitioner and you help other people, right, Janet?
Yes.
Yeah. So you know that sometimes when we are really close to the mirror, it's like we're looking at ourselves in the mirror and we're this close that everything is distorted and blurry. And so I was like, I need my own help. I can't coach myself. It's clearly not working.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
the way I worked with, I would not work with anyone else this way, but I can't see. So I said, I need somebody. I need somebody. I need somebody. And whether it's in my marriage too, it's a whole other thing, but my marriage wasn't great. I'd been married for 22 years at the time. My marriage I just felt like stuck in my marriage. We were just doing life and raising kids and I had like one foot out the door, but I didn't even know how to bring that up with my husband. And then spiritually, I said, I would love a spiritual mentor too, because how do I get myself out of this? I don't understand where I am. It's so dark. I feel so disconnected from my higher power. And God was so good because within like a week, through another colleague, and it was just this divine synchronicity. She said she was working with this woman and she said, Molly, you would really like Molly, Jen. She's so much more like you. She's very spiritual. I always thought it was interesting that this colleague would say, oh, I was very spiritual. Because I guess I am very spiritual. I'm very comfortable. I've always been very comfortable talking about God and I've always believed in God. But I'm like, so I thought, well, let me talk to this woman because I am looking for somebody to help me. And Molly was in my world. She was in my space. She was a coach that helped people with all the things. And so I had a phone call with Molly and Molly was so good with me from that first call. She said, I can help you. She was so boldly confident. She said, I can help you. I know I can help you, but it sounds like you're doing a lot of other things. And I don't work that way. I can't. I'm not invalidating any of the modalities that you're doing, but we don't know what's what, Jen, and we got to strip it all down. So why don't you call me back when you're willing to step away from everything you're doing? And that jolted me.
Ooh.
I was like, whoa, she's not going to work with me? That like stubborn part of me, it was like, no, she's going to work with me. And I hired her and I did. I was terrifying for me to let go of all the things. She asked me to take a break. She's like, can you take a break? Like from everything, like every practitioner you're seeing, your acupuncturist, your energy worker, all of it. Like, I'm like, all of it? And she's like, I want all of it. We need 3 months of nothing. Stop every supplement. And I'm like, because I was clinging to so many things. And this is what I
Yeah.
want our listeners to really understand for me in my process. Again, this is just my process, but I was clinging to so many things outside of myself to find help, to fix me. And I know that this whole conversation in the podcast is surrounded around like the thought of, well, suicidal ideation and the thought of ending your life. I understand today her process. I ended up working with Molly for 3.5 years, very, very closely, weekly, but more than even just a weekly session. She was my coach and then she became my mentor because we transitioned a bit in there. She was helping me. And after about a year, I said, Molly, I really, really want to learn how to be like you. I don't want to be you, but I would like to be as confident and effective in helping other people as you are. Will you help me with that?" And so she went all in. She went all in, Janet. And there is something that I found out about Molly later that I will also add here in this podcast. But Molly helped me, my gosh, with everything. And we had to tear the entire house down. And in that, I told her everything. She became the person that I trusted more than any other human being. I shared with her, which I had never, ever shared with anybody, the SI thoughts that became my escape. How many times, and I will say in my work with Molly, especially the first 2 years, I probably had more SI thoughts than I had ever had before. And it was
Because you didn't
because
have all of those escapes.
I didn't have the escapes. I didn't have the escapes. And she wanted me to see everything that was there. I needed to take a look at what was there. She was forcing me to take a look at my limiting beliefs. She was forcing me to take a look at my distorted constructs, mental constructs that were not truth. And it hurt. It was humbling. I had to get really humble. I could not continue to work with her if I wasn't humble, because in order to be honest, we have to step into humility. But man, was my pride in the way at first. And I fought her and I fought her. And eventually I dropped the pride because she was so strong and she loved me. She was not being mean. I thought she was being mean at first. She was never being mean. I really did. I was like, "You're just mean." She wasn't. She was loving me strong. She was loving me in the way that I needed to be loved. And she was loving me up. She really was loving me up. And so once she would say to me, "Jen, I'm going to reflect something back at you," because she was also trained in functional medicine like I am, and naturopathy and all the things. And so she said, "I do not believe that you are clinically depressed, in that your depression is not, it's not the same. It's like you're not staying in a low state and never ever coming out of it." Right. So I want to differentiate that here, even for listeners. If you are in a place where it is just low, 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 low all the time, and you can't get your head above water ever, that is different. And you might need some other different kinds of support. Now, Molly and I brought on amino acid support for me, which you can bring on some support to help your body make serotonin. In some ways, I think that was me and her giving me a little bit of a like an olive branch. Like, "Okay, done. We'll take it so you know that you've got your serotonin supported." But what she pointed out to me was my depression was almost a reaction to those times where I felt worthless. I felt like I was inherently wrong. I felt trapped in my chronic people pleasing, and I didn't know how to put up a boundary. I lived without a lot of boundaries, Janet, like a lot of boundaries, because I couldn't. Because if you put up a boundary, then somebody might not necessarily like you, and they'll be mad at you. And that felt like death to me. Like if someone didn't like me. Anyway, am I okay in like just sharing my stories like that,
Yeah.
my story like this and letting it flow? Okay. So anyway, what happened along the way with Molly was she really started to get me to hone in on exactly when are you having these thoughts. So she had me do this exercise where I would track my thoughts. Anytime I would have these self-deprecating, very negative thoughts that may or may not push me into like an SI type of a fantasy. It was like, for me, it was an escape. It really was this habitual escape where I would just start beating the shit out of myself. And then if I'm beating myself up, then how do I get out of it? I just deserve to die. Why don't you just die? Why don't you just leave it all? Just leave it all. Walk away from all of it. Walk away from your marriage. Because at the same time, Molly actually was working with my husband individually, and we were tearing the house down in our marriage. Like, this is too hard. Just escape it. Parenting got really hard, especially as my
Yeah.
kids became teenagers. When your kids start reflecting back at you, your deepest wounds, oh, that was really hard. And I'm like, they'd be better off without me. Those just became these thoughts that I would have to escape. It was actually to escape the intensity of the work that was in front of me. I was in resistance. And so when you're in resistance, you will perpetuate your suffering. You will always perpetuate the suffering. So anytime that I was in resistance, my suffering would get greater. It was like the dial would be turned up. And so Molly had me start tracking it. And we actually used the note on my phone, and she had me share it with her, where I would just write down when I'd have these really, really self-deprecating thoughts, and what was happening. And very
Interesting.
quickly, It was very interesting approach to doing this and then having to share it with her. Again, for anyone listening, I was in a very, very close relationship with her. We would not only would we coach every week, and then she was coaching me and mentoring me, and she gave me so much extra. I mean, sometimes we'd be on a Zoom for 4 hours and then she'd be texting me every day. Like, this isn't how I came to see this is not how Molly worked with anybody else. But she saw something in me. I knew she saw something in me, and she was determined to not fix me, but she was determined to not quit too. So I met my match in her because I'm a no quitter and she's a no quitter. And so over some time, we shifted it to calling it my compassionate inner critic. So we identified the inner critic and we identified the languaging and the patterning of my inner critic. And then she had me take a teddy bear. And my youngest daughter had this giant teddy bear, that was like the size of her when she got it when she was like 6 years old. And I asked to borrow her teddy bear, and Molly's like, get a teddy bear, and I want you to hug every time you feel these self-deprecating thoughts. I want you to come and now hug that inner critic and tell her, thank you, but you don't need to do that anymore. Like, you
Mm.
don't need to be so critical anymore. And so we're going to start calling her the compassionate inner critic. And so we did this. We did this for a little while, and it it started to shift everything. Like, things started to stop. I started to love myself more in this. There was so much more work around what we did too, but all of a sudden I just stopped. I just stopped having I stopped going there. I stopped going to that place. I stopped beating myself up in that way and using the SI thoughts to escape my pain. And instead I started to compassionately love the little girl who started this as a way to escape and control and manage the chaos around her. And it was beautiful. It was really, really, really beautiful. Things started to get better for me. I started to have longer streaks with stable moods. I started to be gentler and kinder to myself. And in being gentler and kinder to myself, I was gentler and kinder to everybody else around me. I started to be able to have a deeper connection to God. Yeah. So that was a bit of my journey. A little bit of this story. I think my story is everybody's story is unique and they're so beautiful, and how loved and seen that I was my entire life throughout all of this. So Janet, years and just again, 3 years of working with Molly very intensely, and 3 years into our relationship, I was really starting to gain a lot of traction in loving myself and coming home to who I am and helping other people in very different ways. I became such a better coach. I asked her to mentor me, and
Yeah.
she did. And it really was through my own process, because all of a sudden, when I really start loving on myself and having grace and compassion for myself, I was able to start doing that with others. And I also stopped trying to fix other people, and I met them where they are. So much grace and compassion for other people in a way that I never did before. And when we stopped judging ourselves, which I stopped judging myself so harshly, I stopped judging other people too. And beautiful, I was able to really, really help people in a vastly different way. And I could see, like, gosh, so I'm seeing people before me heal in different ways. And so 3 years into my relationship with Molly, right as I'm starting to really get some footing and love myself and come home to myself, she told me something that rocked my world. And she told me I have terminal cancer. Yeah. Hmm.
It's
Yes. Yeah. So that was, yeah, January of 20. Yeah. She said, she called me on a Zoom, and it was like a random Thursday. And she said, I have something to share with you, Jen. And I came to find out that she actually had known for months prior, but this was really when we were like, she was working her butt off to help get me to the place where I was really loving myself. Like, we were done with the SI, because if
right.
I mean, Molly telling me she had cancer, if I hadn't gotten to that place, I'm not
Yeah.
sure that I would have. So she had jaw cancer, had absolutely no risk factors for jaw cancer at all. She said to me, she was such a bold woman. She used her voice. She called people higher, was always in love. She connected them with the divine. She was an amazing, amazing human, such an amazing human. And she said, it's not lost on me that it's in my jaw. I use my voice every single day to help other people, and I'm not going to stop until I am not here on this earth, but I'm actually not going to be done either when I leave my physical body. So I'm going to ask something of you big, and I'm going to ask that you don't tell anyone. And I was like, I'm sorry, you're working with my husband and I'm going to tell anyone? Like, you've become like my closest confidant, my friend. You're the only person that knows everything about me. You know everything. I
Mhm.
told nobody about any of these, anything, nothing about my suicidal fantasies, nothing. And you're leaving? And she said, but I'm going to invite you close, Jen. I'm going to invite you to walk this thin veil with me if you choose, because I have another gift for you in it. And I was like, you're going to learn that there's no fear in death. And I was like, I accept your invitation. So let's do it. And I did. So 6 months, really, from the time that she told me, a little less than 6 months from the time that she told me until the time that she left this world. And she did eventually tell my husband, but she didn't want other people to know because Molly wanted to continue to help other people. And she didn't want her cancer to get in the way. And she's like, I'm going to use every granule of sand that I have in my hourglass while I'm here. And she did. And I also believe I came to see that her helping other people was what helped her get through the pain and agony and rise above the suffering that she was in and alchemize it. So, jumping forward, when Molly died, I had never experienced grief like that before in my entire life, ever, ever, ever. I have lost my nephew. I've obviously lost other loved ones like grandparents, and that was very hard things. I've lost friends, but I'd never lost someone like this, where I thought like a life force was ripped out from underneath me or from me. And I entered into a deep, deep state of grief. I didn't understand it. And I came to learn more about Molly after she died. So her brother was one of the only other people that she ever told that she was dying. And when she passed, she asked her brother and me to share with the people. And here I am sharing with I have colleagues, I had friends that were working with Molly and that were in relationships with Molly. And I'm sharing with them that Molly had cancer and died. So it was devastating to them. And
Mhm.
but her brother shared something with me, and he said, "Molly always told me a lot of God stories, like these like you can't deny God, or she would hear from God. She's like she was very connected. She would say, "I can come and go." I didn't understand that at first. I understand that now, but like she's like, "I come and go," and I think you understand that be doing what you do, right? So she was very much a strong channeler, um, and I might cry. Her brother Casey told me, Jen, I'm going to share a God story with you about Molly. And she had a lot of her own, but this was mine. Molly had a hard life, and people who can help at the level that Molly helped me at and helped many, many others at is not book knowledge. That's lived experience and strong divine connection. So Molly got married at 19 to a man who was 11 years older, and they were never able to have children. And Molly really wanted children. At one point, they tried to adopt when she was in her late 30s. And at that point, it wasn't working out. It was very expensive. And her husband turned to her and said, I'm too old to have children. I don't want children. And she had to accept it. She had to accept that children were not going to be part of her picture. So she poured everything into her career. And coaching was not her first career. She had a website business, a design firm that was very successful. And in her early phase, she found out her husband was having an affair and she tried to work it out, took him back. And a year into working it out, found out the affair was still going. They ended up getting divorced. He married the woman and she had two young children. So that was devastating. That was devastating for a woman who wanted children and who was told that he was too old to have children. And I think that left a wound on Molly. And Casey told me that shortly after, about a year after Molly's divorce and their mother had died the same year, he was on a business trip and he had just returned and he had a stomach virus and he was really, really sick. He's in and out of the bathroom. He'd been traveling on an airplane. He crawls into bed feeling like he's dying and he hears a very audible voice. And it was the voice of his mother, but he knew that it was God as well saying, go check on your sister. And he goes, check on my sister. I'm sick. I'm in bed. And it wouldn't stop. And it said, you have to go check on your sister. He calls his sister, Molly. She's not answering the phone. And he goes, damn it, Molly. And he gets in the car and he drives to her house half an hour away. And he's banging on the doors and no answer. And her master suite was on the bottom floor. And there was a little peek in the curtain and he could see the cat that he had bought her after her husband left as a gift, playing with her red hair, just laying sprawled on the bed. And he banged down the door and he broke down the door and he got her to the hospital within minutes. She had completely overdosed and was within minutes of losing her physical life. At that moment, in all the years of me working with Molly and me being vulnerable and honest with her, that was one thing she never told me. I knew about her divorce. I knew how hard it was. I did not know that Molly had tried to take her life. And she was so confident in how she helped me, though. She was so strong and firm. And I would get mad at her too. I was like, you don't understand what it's like to be this depressed. You don't understand what it's like to have these thoughts. And she said, I do. And I'm like, how? And there was a moment where I was disappointed. Like, why didn't you ever share that with me? And I don't know why to this day, why she didn't share that, but me knowing, and then there was something about, it's almost like she knew I would find out. And I also would find out her behind the scenes. And there were some behind the scenes. Her entire existence and her life and her way of surviving the most painful experience of her life. Once she was saved and she had deep faith, but Casey, her brother, told me her faith did not deepen to the level it was until after that. It was after. It was as if she was saved from the bottom of the pit and she knew it. She knew that that was divine saving. And her mission became helping other people. And she had trouble with trust. And I didn't even realize that I became one of like her inner circle. Like it was like me
Yeah.
and her brother. And she said, she had asked me, like, she taught me so much and poured so much into me. And she wanted me to carry that forth in this world. And before she died, she had said, first of all, I'll always still be here. You have some of my sand in your hourglass too now, Jen. And I'll always be here with you. I will always be here with you doing this work. So continue to do the work, continue to do this work in this world. And it was as if even that with her, with knowing that she tried to take her life, it was such a gift for me, Jenna. It was like this gift and like God saving her through her brother in that way. And then how she chose to alchemize that and the good that she brought and all that she poured into me. None of that was to be like kept to myself. And it's not that I go out there and I say, well, this is my story and you got to fix yourself the way I fixed me. Not at all. But it's like what you do here on this podcast. There's a frequency here that comes through us when we share, here was my darkest moment. And here's how I came out. That's hope. That's like the frequency, right? Of
Exactly.
hope,
Yeah.
right? That's flowing through. So all of that said, Molly and my grief and learning that she had been in that place. And if Molly had been that dark and Molly had been so close to ending her life and God saved her and then gave her purpose and I watched her, she had joy. She had joy. Did she have all the things she started off wanting as a young woman? No. Did life play out the hand of cards that she desired? No, but she made the best of it. And I watched it and I watched joy until literally her last breath. And so I was going to find a way out of my grief. And grief you can't rush grief.
Nope.
You got to grow around it. And, that's just that's probably another half hour that I won't put here. But I would say I had levels to my own healing and my own growth with suicidal ideation. And one of the things that I really was Molly led me to another form of healing, a tool that I brought on within the first year of her being gone. I got led to an MDMA journey, a guided MDMA journey. And an MDMA is a medication that quiets the amygdala in the brain. I was working really hard. I hired another colleague to help me because I was so deep in it and my body was in breakdown again and I couldn't get off the toilet. And I knew it was metaphysical. And I hired one of the smartest people that I knew outside Molly to help me because again, I am. I can't. I'm like, can you look at my labs? Can you take a look at these functional tests. What the heck is wrong? I can't get off the toilet. And she goes, it's your nervous system. I go, yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
Help me. I was like, awesome. Nervous system. Great. I've done a lot of things. I've done EMDR and Gupta, and like I've trialed so many things. And her name was Jen too. And I said, Jen, really, how do I do this? And she's like, you need better boundaries. Okay, great. Let's go back and revisit boundaries. And I kept going back to this people pleasing thing. And through a whole bunch of other divine synchronicities, I stumbled across something I didn't even know existed. I didn't even know that MDMA was used therapeutically. I'd known about other psychedelics. It's not a psychedelic, it's an empathogen, but I experienced it and it was life changing. It absolutely was life changing. Molly was there the whole time, not literally, like I couldn't see her, but I felt her and I conversed with her and I was able to really dig deep into my grief and to understand where it was coming from and really, really, really get to the root of my chronic people pleasing and see it as constructs of my mind. And that empowered me so much. And it really, really ever since has helped me to deeper love myself, to understand that I don't need to die to go to heaven, that heaven is a state of existence that I get to choose to create and embody here now. So from the moment that I did that first MDMA journey, I knew it was something else I was going to help other people do. I've helped guide over 30 people on journeys so far, and it's all connected. It's just all of it is just connected because the nickname for MDMA, the street drug name is Molly, which I found comical and hysterical. And and that just, again, for me, it just has helped me really, really, really be able to understand anytime that I'm in fear, anytime that I am feeling like I'm less than or I'm unworthy, it's like my egoic mind. And our ego is not bad. It's not something we want to like erase, but I'm feeding that. I can choose to feed what feels good and I can choose to return to the state of love and I can choose to embody that I am all that is our creator, that is the divine, and that I really am created on purpose for a purpose and I'm really not wrong. And it doesn't mean that I never feel anxious or that I never feel sad or that I never feel depressed or that I never have triggers from I call it old shrapnel. I do, but I catch it really quickly today. I catch it. Sometimes it hangs around. Maybe it'll hang around for a few hours. Maybe it even hangs around for a few days. I'm in perimenopause. I'm like at the tail end of all of it. Anybody listening? And that hormones, can contribute to pulling on our mood. And sometimes there's distortions even from that. But I can call it out at the very least, I can call it out and I can say, all right, this is a tidal wave. I'm going to ride it. I'm not going to resist it. I'm going to ride it. I'm going to pull out the tools that I know I have. I'm going to do the things whether it's breath work, any type of somatic work helps me tremendously. Anything that helps me connect to the divine helps me, whether that's the nature's huge, huge, huge. But I'm very empowered by that because, again, I've been in some pretty darn dark pits. I've had some really ugly moments along my journey with this, and if I can get up and out of them, anyone can. And also knowing, having known Molly the way I knew Molly and know her today, there's hope. There's always hope for all of us. And there's reasons. There's reasons for why we feel this way. There's reasons, whether they are biochemical or whether they are constructs of our mind. Again, like I had a lot of those, a lot. It's conditioning. It's learned. I don't believe
Yeah.
that my depression and my anxiety and depression was literally genetic, like from my mom, but it was learned. I watched how my mom avoided things. I watched how my mom coped and I watched how my grandmother coped. And I have so much grace, compassion, forgiveness, so much today that I didn't have. I was angry. I used to be very angry at my mom actually when she would when she'd get so low that she wouldn't get out of bed, when she'd get so low that she'd overdose, I'd get angry and mad. And I don't have that anymore. I have just nothing but compassion. So that's my story. That was a long story, but
It was
that is my story.
so
Yeah.
good. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story and Molly's story. I mean, we got a twofer today.
You got a twofer. Janet, before I went on this podcast this morning, and I'll say this to our listeners, I asked her, because even when I shared about her, obviously it was something that she didn't tell me,
Mhm.
but she knows I know. And I think she knew I would find out. And I said, can you just if it's meant to be shared, just let it flow. So it was meant to be shared. We did get a twofer. Molly and I came here today.
Yes. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and, just like she stood really, really, really strong for me for years. Jen, yes, you can. Actually, I purposely chose my tea mug. I know we have people listening, not watching, but
We
she
also
made
have
me.
people watching.
Oh, some people are watching. Okay, so throughout my journey with Molly, over the years, she gave me 9 different mugs.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, and it would like they would be part of my it was always like the first one was just patience. That was all it said. And they're big. She's so cute. She's like, we need a big cup of patience. And this one was my second, and it says patience, persistence. Yes, I can.
I love that.
And I chose this um, purposefully for our conversation here today. Two of them along my journey with her. One of those broke. It broke a few months. It was on Lionsgate on 8/8/2013, 2 months after she died. It broke. I broke 2 that day. I'd never broke any, and it says, "Relax, trust, receive, believe, and love." But I think it broke because I actually have learned how to trust. Both of them had said trust because I really have learned how to trust. I've learned how to trust myself. I've learned how to trust God within me, and I've learned how to trust the process of life, and it's not always easy. No, and I don't we're not here for it to be easy in the sense that us human beings often want it to be. All my years, I know I shared like, oh my gosh, I looked outside of myself for so many years and threw so many things at me. It's not that there's not a lot of modalities out there that can help. I know you do. One of the many things you do is energy work, right? And it's beautiful. It's like such a gift for people to work with someone who is so gifted in energy work. But one of the things I've also come to learn is we have all the answers within us. Everything we need is within us. So the more inward we go, the more we are guided and provided for. So when we go inward first, not outward, but we go inward, we are guided to what we need. Like I learned that. I mean, being guided to MDMA, for instance, as part of my healing journey, that came from such a different state of me being. If I had found that 6 years ago, I don't think that it would have landed for me the way it did now. I was called to it. It was prompted. And I remember the day that I felt it. It was such an internal, oh, bubbles are being thrown up. It was such an internal yes but I've learned how to do that. I didn't know how to do that until I learned how to slow down, quiet noise, be okay sitting in divine discomfort. Like it is okay. We don't want to swirl in it. We want to be really careful not to feed the self-deprecating thoughts, to globalize the thoughts. I was a huge globalizer, and the more I'd beat myself up, the darker and deeper I'd go. And so having people, if you need help, having trusted people that who can hold space for you, that you could call out to say, "Can you witness me?" Who are going to challenge you, who are going to call you higher. Molly called me higher, and it was tough love, and I didn't always like it, but I'm so incredibly grateful that somebody essentially channeled God. And because we're all seen, we are all seen, we are all loved. Every one of us is loved. And that's something that I didn't believe for a long time. I believed I was the exception. And it became comical to me. Like my first journey, when I did my first MDMA journey, I actually was able to laugh at the story that I was living into, that I was so special. I was so not special that I was so special that I was the exception to the one that wasn't special, that everybody else was special, but I was that special that I wasn't special. And I was like, that is quite a creative story that your mind constructed.
Uh-huh.
Awesome, Jen. Let's construct a new one. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here
Welcome.
and sharing stories with us and
Yeah.
giving us some inspiration and some hope to
Mm.
lead us forward.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Janet. Thank you for the opportunity for me to share my story and to share Molly's. And I know our episode went way longer than they typically do, but I thank you. I really, really appreciate what you're doing and the space that you're giving people to share this and to find hope.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you for listening. Remember that you are loved, you are worthy, you are valuable, you are meant for more, and that it really does get better. If you are in crisis, there are numbers that you can call or text to get the help that you need. That information for Canada and the US is in the description below each episode. If you are in immediate crisis, please call 911. We love you, and I hope you'll listen again.